Hello YouTube, it's a rainy day today, fit for contemplation and to read the Hagakure. We're entering part 3. Following the way is to keep one's mind absolutely uncontaminated from evil, even in a single breath. It is not that there is no thought. The point is to have correct thoughts without letting evil thoughts manifest. That being the case, the way is one, but nobody is able to see the light and understand this reasoning easily. It is only possible to reach a level of unadulterated purity after many years of diligent training. So here, from what I understand, Yamamoto is talking both about life in general and the way. And as far as life, it's interesting to see that his ideas are echoed in the Western school of thought and in Western philosophy in some books that were created sometimes 3, 4, 500 years after the publication of the Hagakure. So here, the idea is that the warrior, the man, needs to follow the way and keep his mind pure of evil thoughts. But he's not saying that you shouldn't be evil. He's not saying that you should be a saint. He's saying, understand that you have demons, canalize them, and don't let them take over your life. This is what a lot of the philosophers that I like say about the life of men. Men are always going to be sinful. We're always going to have faults. We're always going to have portions. Denying that is very dangerous. People who deny that are usually the most dangerous types of men because they are what some people would call toxically masculine, because they refuse to recognize that they have a beast inside, and therefore when the beast gets loose, it's too late because they don't acknowledge it, and therefore they have no control over it. As a man, you should understand your demons and you should have a solid grasp on them. They shouldn't have a grasp on you. And that attitude needs to be in everyday life. You need to keep your mind uncontaminated from evil. And it means that in reality there are 3 stratas. There is the stratus of the existence of evil within you. You are human, there is evil in you. There is no way around that. After that, there is the materialization of evil within your mind, meaning that you are giving space for that type of negative energy to exist within your brain. You already should not let that happen, because people who have done certain things or did things that they regretted will tell you that that first started as a thought. It's a thought that you entertained, it became a fantasy, and eventually it materialized. This is the power of manifestation. You think about something so much that it eventually comes to life. It didn't come to life because of magic. You didn't summon it, but you spent so much mental energy on it that eventually you created an environment in which this thing could only happen. It couldn't not happen because of you. That's stratus number 3. It's action. It's when you actually do evil things. But Yamamoto is so ahead of the game that he's telling you, hey, when the action happens and you do something evil, it was already too late to start with because you created that in your mind. So don't even let that happen. It's an important part of self-control to be able to do that, because you will be able, when you do that, to anticipate your evil penchants, your demons. You always need to have correct thoughts. So you need to feed the positive things in your life and make sure that the negative ones don't manifest. It doesn't mean that you need to hide them or that you don't need to feel them. You need to accept that they're there, but you need to have a solid grasp on them. And then he speaks about the way. He says, because of what he just explains, the way is one, meaning that all of these things participate in the way. But no one is able to see the light, meaning that some men are able to understand that application in their real life, But when it comes to actually doing it to pursue the way, they're not able to. What would it mean for the way? For me, it means no excuses. It doesn't mean that there shouldn't be excuses. It means that you shouldn't allow them to exist within your life, right? If you mess up, own up to it. Even if it was actually something exterior of your own power that did it. This is the true way. Because anything besides that is going to waste your time. It's going to be a waste of energy. You need to keep advancing like an arrow of pure energy on the way. Excuses just slow you down. And he says that the only way to get that is by training. It's to develop a level of purity that is only attainable after many years of training. But he says diligent training. For me, there's a difference, and it's something I explain on the channel a lot. There's a difference between training, which anyone can do, and diligent training. Diligent training is going to be physical and spiritual, and it's going to be tailored towards progress. Some people train for 10 years, they make zero progress. That's not training. Might as well do nothing. How will you reply when your own heart asks questions? This sentiment could even rival Buddhist Sutra, and many know of it. Recently, erudite people put on pretenses and feign wisdom, an act that makes them lower than ordinary men. At least ordinary men are forthright. So many things to unpack here. First off, the mantra that he's talking about, how will you reply when your own heart asks questions, for me, should be a life model for everyone. Because if you ask yourself that question every day, to me, you will stay on the way. Because I found that people lie to others, but no one really lies to themselves. Even people who have pathologies, who are pathological liars, they're not really lying to themselves. They're lying to the environment around them. And for the environment to believe that they actually believe what they're saying, they have to look like they are actually lying to themselves. They're not. You know in your heart when you're saying the truth. You know when you're living a lie. You know when you're using excuses. The only way around that is ask yourself this: how will you reply when your own heart asks questions? When your own inside, when your soul asks you, hey, did you really do the best you could do? Is that your max? You can't lie to that. For me, that's the best. The best way to cut any type of retreat is to make a promise to yourself. Because if you break that, there is no turning back. Breaking a promise to someone else is already scummy. Breaking a promise to yourself might sign the end of your life as a man. And as he says, that could rival any type of mantra from any type of religion. After that, he segues into talking about erudite people. Why does he do that? He does that because, from what I get, these are the type of people who do not ask questions to their own hearts. They feign wisdom, and it makes them lower than ordinary men. If one asks this very question, there will be nowhere to hide from the truth. It is a penetrating judge of one's mind. Thus, it is prudent to avoid shameful behavior in anticipation of an introspective judgment of guilt. It's interesting here because he first off presents that question as something that can be used to someone else to probe. But he doesn't really dwell on it. The reason why is because you're not really going to get much out of people when you use that. Why? Because people are just going to lie. They're going to protect their ego, they're going to save face. So when you ask that type of question, they're either going to turn it into ridicule, or they will pretend that were they to ask that question to themselves, they would be fine. It's very easy to see people, to differentiate between people who have integrity and people who have none. But at the end of the day, Shoujo says that it shouldn't be used, besides penetrating the mind of someone, it should be used to penetrate your own mind. And that can be sort of counterintuitive. But if you're actually trying to better yourself, if you're trying to stay on the way, that is going to be a very useful strategy, because We all have built-in mechanisms to protect our ego. We all have things that we tell ourselves that we've deluded into thinking after years and years of telling that to ourselves. But that question is going to break right through all of that. And all of that, what it's doing is just weighting you down. Defense mechanisms, excuses, all of that stuff is really just preventing you from becoming better. So you need you need to do away with all of that. Everyone in the world is like a puppet controlled by other forces, which is why the character Gen is fitting. And he says before that the Chinese character Gen can be read as Maboroshi, which is a vision, an illusion, or a dream. And that in India, sorcerers are referred to as Genshu Tsuhi, illusionists. I'm not going to talk about the etymology or the linguistic aspect of this, even though if you speak Japanese, you're going to understand that this is very interesting. It can be attributed to the fact that those regions actually had contacts and therefore their languages developed together, and they had a similar vision of life because they shared similar types of religion during that time period. But as far as everyone in the world being a puppet, that's true. We're all a puppet. The goal should be to be your own puppet in a sense. You need to be the puppet and the puppeteer. What is the puppet? The puppet is your body. Like this, all of this, that's not me. That's just my envelope. Me is, some people will tell you it's here. I don't necessarily agree with that. Your soul is not stored in your brain. It's stored somewhere. It's there, but it's what's moving this thing. You have your soul, you have your spirit, and you have your body. And there are subcategories within that, but you need to be able to puppeteer that puppet. And that comes through physical mastery and spiritual mastery, because if the spirit, which is supposed to be the puppeteer, is weak, how come the body, the puppet, be strong? It's not possible. And vice versa. You can have a very strong spirit, but if the body that it moves is weak, then what's the point? And you're going to find that if you stick to training, if you stay on the path, both are going to be strong. Besides certain exceptions where people take chemical crutches, I've always found that people who have strong developed bodies also have strong developed spirits, because it is a requirement to develop it. And I also find that weaklings, people who don't want to train hard, people who never get results, have very strong spirits, because of course it makes sense. The spirit is too weak, it's not driving the body anywhere. And when the two of them are strong and they are working in cooperation, you're unstoppable. And you're also unstoppable because a pact has been created, meaning that your spirit and your body are going to be in competition to see who can be the strongest. And the truth is that there's never going to be a victor. They'll keep competing until you die. That's a great thing. To me, that's the human experience. That's what we should all be doing. And also, you'll find that, and that's bro science in a sense, but I believe that if your spirit stays strong, it will keep the body strong, meaning that you're not going to get sick, you're not going to get injured as easily, you're going to be more resilient, and vice versa. Living your life every day in a strong body is incredibly healthy for your mind, because you exist 24/7 within a vessel that is worthy of your mind, and that is incredibly gratifying. I know that a lot of people who feel bad about themselves and their self-esteem, people will tell you, oh, just love yourself. That's great and all, but it's tough to love yourself when the body that you live in and that you're supposed to be loving is not up to par. So the solution is actually the vain solution. Make the body better, beautify the body, and you'll see that your mental health is going to improve tenfold. It's true that some people don't really manage to free themselves from their insecurities, and they have good bodies when they still don't feel good about it, but usually it's because they followed someone else's path. They followed someone else's direction, and when they get there, they realize it's not what they wanted. If you're true to yourself, you're going to find that your well-being is going to improve tremendously. There are some men who wish to be called heroes, But as they think only of their own honor and reputation, they inevitably fail. They offer remonstrance, thinking of it as meritorious deeds of service, but it leaves them open for condemnation and then ruin. There are many examples of this. They fail because the root of their intentions is not sincere. A warrior who surrenders body and soul, thinking only of how to make things better, will always find the right course of action without making mistakes. That's basically discussing selflessness. There is no point in doing an action that is supposedly virtuous if you do that for praise, in my opinion. You should do it expecting nothing in return. And whether you believe in karma or not, in my opinion, that's what karma is. You will get your retribution eventually in one form or the other. It can be something small, but it will be there. And but you should. That's the entire thing about it. You shouldn't do it because of that. You should do it because it's the right thing to do. And at the end of the day, the retribution for me when you do something nice is the feeling of doing something nice. That's all that matters. You already got your retribution because you got a nice feeling from doing something nice for someone else. That's all that matters. And of course, because it is widely seen as something that is socially beneficial, you will get a social status boost if people witness you doing that, which is why so many people stage acts of virtue. There is nothing more shameful than that. You should do everything so that no one knows that you did it. You should do things, even maintain your anonymous status. Don't share your identity. Just do the things. You don't need to share your name for the benefits to come back to you eventually. Why? You're making this life a better place. You're making this world a better place. This is all that you should strive towards. Do something because it will, in the grand scheme, make life worth living for all of us. And if you don't do that, you're going to fail. And you're going to fail in what aspect? You might get social status. People might never understand what you're actually doing. And for the most part, people are easily deceived, so it never happens. But for yourself, for your soul, and for your peregrination on the path, it is not good. Your soul is going to perish slowly but surely because you're not feeding it. They fail because the root of their intention is not sincere. Always be sincere. Even if it hurts people, be sincere. Be true to yourself. That's super important. Because you'll find that people who are untrue to themselves, for others, eventually lose who they are. And when you lose who you are, you have nothing else. It is testing to disavow things that run counter to moral principles and maintain righteousness. Many terrible blunders will be made through believing that the supreme principle is to uphold moral ideals at all times. Above the realm of moral principles is divine truth in the way. So important, and of course it aligns perfectly with what Musashi said in the Book of Five Rings. Above everything is the way, and the way is void. So what is the way? It's frustrating, and at the same time it's intellectually challenging, because the way is everything and nothing at the same time. The way is what is above. The way is even above the divinities. That is insane. Some religious people will not like to hear that. But so what could be the way? If it's greater than God, what could be greater than God? It's that infinity. It's that progression. It's everything, and it encapsulates everything. And of course it's above everything because it's nothing. It only makes sense. It's void. And as Yamamoto says, it's testing to disavow things that run counter to moral principles and be righteous. That's one thing. Depending on how strong your mind is, it also comes from the type of childhood you had. Some people will never be able to go against the social grain because it's too late for them. They've been programmed to care. Some people don't care. And sometimes not caring is bad too because you're destroying the social contract. You need to care a little bit. But it is a challenge to be able to stand true to your morals and values when 100 people disagree. And I think a lot of people can relate to that in today's society, where you will have something that you believe it's true 100%, and people will say that by believing that you are evil. And a lot of people break under that type of pressure because they don't want to be ostracized. So yes, maintaining righteousness, which basically righteousness is just being true to yourself. You might be wrong in the grand scheme of things. What you believe in might be wrong. At the end of the day, right and wrong are not absolute concepts. So, take that with a grain of salt. He also says that you can make blunders because you try to uphold the supreme principle of moral at all times. Some people have their lives destroyed by that because they're too rigid. And at the end of the day, it's brave, it's courageous to be rigid, to be true to yourself. But what Shoujo says is that above that realm of moral principles is the way, which is the absolute truth. So practically, what does that mean? It means to me that, for example, if you are faced with a situation where you are opposing your ideology to someone else and you cannot convince them, but you are in your mind 100% certain that you're right, the divine truth would just be to accept that the other person is different and move on. You cannot save everyone. And also, why should you? Right? You can try. I try. I personally, it's something that I struggle with. I try to save people. But maybe they don't want to be saved, and maybe I'm not going to save them. I might even be dooming them. That's the way. It's accepting that that's a possibility. It's the void, right? It's the realm of anything can happen, and you are part of that everything. This is a challenging concept to comprehend, yes, and only extraordinary men can. When viewed from the highest plane of wisdom, righteousness or justice is but a trivial virtue. That is going to trigger some people, because some people live only for that. They live for justice, they live for virtue. They live in reality for the moral high ground, and that's what Shoujo is fighting against. When you fight for that justice, what are you really fighting for? You're fighting to uphold your view of the world. You're fighting to uphold the truth. In reality, you're fighting to be the government. You're fighting to be the one in charge. You're fighting to be the one that says something and everyone has to abide by it. That's not the way. The way is you, right? It's fine to be righteousness. It's fine to have your justice, but it's yours. That's what he says here when he tells you that all of these are trivial virtues once you enter the highest plane of wisdom. Everything is nothing because nothing matters, right? And sadly, a lot of people stop there and they say, oh, nothing matters, I'm just going to not do anything with my life. No, it means that at the end of the day, you should embrace that notion so that you can destroy every limitation. Because there is no such thing as something that is objectively absolutely important. Who in this world is supposed to decide what is? You. For what people are you deciding that? You. That's it. The way is you and yourself. That's what the way is. And as he says, it's only comprehensible by extraordinary men. I think that that's sort of it's sort of counterintuitive in a sense, because it's hard to get because it's so easy to get. And when I taught people, I've always found that the concepts that were the most obvious, I could never get it out of my students ever. I would sit and wait 5 minutes and be like, this is super easy. And then when I would reveal it, they would be like, oh, duh, it was so easy we didn't think about it. Most of the time it's like this, it's right there, but because it's right there and because it's presented as a concept that is impossible to grasp, people just go above and beyond, and because they try and think too much about it, they miss what it's like. In a sense, it's interesting because the men who put in the most work are going to be the men who are going to be the sharpest. Usually their heads are full of concepts and ideologies and books, and because they have so much, they cannot understand nothingness. It's a contradiction, and this is the reason why it's tough to attain, it's tough to understand the way. And I'm going to finish with this last paragraph for today. There is a way in which this higher wisdom can be accessed, even if only partially, and that is through dialogue with others. Even a man who has not realized this state of mind himself can observe others. It is like watching a game of Go and anticipating 8 moves ahead. There is no better way than to talk with others if you are keen to know your flaws. Listening to men and reading books helps complement your own good sense with the wisdom of the ancients. I agree with 100%. This is an amazing paragraph. I personally preach making your own discoveries. But what I mean by that is not just being in a bubble and not getting information from others. It means never following someone else's path. Do not take what someone says at face value. Make it yours. Take what they say and mix it with who you are, your identity, and get something out of it. Not only when you do that do you create something new, because you're making a brand new thing out of what they said, but you are free. I see too many people who jump from ideology to ideology because they are really just following someone else. Never do that. Be in the wood, interact with others as much as you can, read as many books as you can, but don't be that guy that reads the Communist Manifesto and becomes a communist. Read every single economic manifesto and try and build an economical science within your own brain. Try and broadly understand everything. Don't let yourself be pigeonholed, because when you're pigeonholed, you're easy to manipulate, because the pigeonhole has a name on it and it belongs to someone who also is owned by someone else. So at the end of the day, if you let yourself be that, that's you. You're here, there's a pyramid right there, right? All of the pigeons are here, all right? You belong to the guy at the top. The guy at the top who owns 3 people, who own 16, who own 88, who own 2000, etc., etc. All of that is the systems that exist in this world nowadays. When you fall for that partisanship, you lost yourself, because now you're easy to manipulate. Now you're a puppet. You're a puppet whose puppeteer is someone else, and that's the worst that can happen. It is the worst that can happen. Besides death, and even sometimes death would be more beneficial than that type of life. And so, the way around that is to get knowledge from others and make it your own. And as Shoujo says, he says, you can observe others objectively. Maintain objectivity at all times. And also, and I'm going to end here, this is why people, first off, people who don't read, be wary of people who don't read and who are proud of it. Usually there are low expectation bigots, and they think that reading is for nerds. I mean, reading is super important. It's building a library within your head. And because when you know one thing, you know 10,000 things, reading one book could be enough to write another 100 books. So it's important that you read, and especially if you have kids, make them read young of everything. And also, people who refuse to engage, and especially people who are very keen to censor and any type of regime that promotes censorship, they do that because, as I explained, they want you to be pigeonholed. They don't want you to have a wide set of options. They want you to have one so that they can control you. And for some people, they do that to themselves. Why do people do that to themselves? Well, because it's comfortable. If you only follow one ideology at a time, then life is easy. That's what's right and that is wrong, and I'm only doing that, and everyone who is doing that is an idiot. Those people, sadly, are not going to go anywhere in life, and usually they are a waste of time and energy to deal with. Just disregard these people. Helping them usually doesn't really work. So that's that for today. We're page 65. We're advancing at a pretty good pace, but we still have a lot to do. I love this book. I think that the wisdom we can get from this is insane, and I hope you do too. So I will see you next week.